They told me they'd be back in an hour. I believed them, so I sat outside the bakery, holding a warm paper bag of muffins and a cooling cup of coffee in my hand. Cars passed by one after another, none of them slowing down, no messages, no missed calls, no footsteps returning. And it hit me right there, on that worn-out bench just off the highway, tucked into the edge of a town too small for strangers. I wasn't just alone for the moment. I might have been alone for good. We'd spent weeks planning this trip. Joel said it'd be simple, a quick drive, a long weekend. One last look at the coast before the rain rolled in. He said he'd drive. Marissa said she'd handle the car rental. All I had to do was pack food and bring the old road maps. They made it sound like the good old days, like when Joel was little and I used to navigate from the passenger seat, circling diners with a pen and humming along to the radio. I baked banana bread, wrapped up sandwiches, even tied the silverware in napkins, just like I used to. I folded Joel's favorite sweatshirt just the way he liked it. Brought the tea Marissa always said helped her sleep on long rides. I wasn't tagging along. I was part of it. We stopped in a town I used to love, tucked between hills. Just one main street and a little bakery I hadn't seen in years. Joel pulled into the lot. He said he and Marissa wanted to stretch their legs, maybe fill up on gas, and they'd swing back around to pick me up. Go grab something sweet, they said. Won't be more than an hour. That was at 10:47 a.m. I remember, because the bakery clock was shaped like a cinnamon roll, and always 5 minutes fast. I waited outside on the bench, holding two bags, one for each of them. People came and went. I stayed put. By noon, the muffins had gone soft. My phone, the one Joel had upgraded for me, showed no signal. I had no wallet, no keys, no car. Just a lukewarm cup of coffee and a feeling rising in my chest I couldn't quite name. By 2, the bakery owner leaned out and asked if I was okay. I told her yes, said they'd be back soon. But they didn't come back. Have you ever sat somewhere so long the place itself begins to witness something you can't say out loud? That bench became more than just a bench. It became a dividing line, before and after. And I remember every car that wasn't theirs. The bakery closed early that day. The streets emptied once the sun dropped behind the hills. I stayed until the shadows stretched across the sidewalk and made the air colder than I expected. When I finally stood, I felt the weight in my knees, the kind that only comes when you've waited too long for someone who isn't coming. I walked to the gas station Joel had mentioned. No car, no note, nothing. The attendant let me use the pay phone out back. I dialed a number I still remembered by heart. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. A man filling up his truck pointed me toward the nearest bus stop. He said the night line might take me part of the way. I thanked him and walked slow, the straps of my bag biting into my shoulder. The bus was old. Seats were stiff and faded. I paid in cash using the few crumpled bills I'd tucked in my jacket pocket months ago. The driver didn't say a word. Neither did the woman behind me. Not the teenager with the loud headphones up front. The silence on that bus wasn't peaceful. It sat heavy. UNMOVING. We made 3 stops that night. At each one, I stared out the window, half hoping to see someone I knew. At the second stop, I tried to nap, curled against the cold window, my jacket balled behind my head, and that's when it came rushing back. Joel had been 5. He'd come down with a fever that just wouldn't quit. I stayed up all night with him, watching his little chest rise and fall, whispering songs even when my voice was gone. He clung to my wrist as I pressed a cold cloth to his forehead. Back then, every breath he took felt like proof I was doing something right. And there on that bus, bumping through the dark, I saw that same little boy in my mind, the one who once told me he didn't want anyone else but me. By the time we reached the next town, it was past midnight. I got off and sat outside a shuttered hardware store on a metal bench that felt colder than anything I'd known. I pulled my hood up and wrapped my arms tight around myself. The street was still. Funny how you can hold the memory of a small, warm child in your arms and sit alone on a freezing sidewalk, and somehow both feel connected. I didn't cry. I just waited for the next bus, and I wondered, at what point had Joel stopped needing me? How had I missed it happening? By the time I got back to my street, the sky had turned gray with morning. My feet were sore, my back ached from the ride. But deeper than that was a kind of tired I hadn't felt before, the kind that burrows into your bones. I climbed the porch steps and reached for the door, locked. I reached into my pocket out of habit. Of course, no keys. I hadn't carried them in months. Joel had said he'd handle everything. No need for me to fuss with keys or alarm codes. It had seemed thoughtful then. I knocked once, then again, no answer. I sent a message, then another, no typing bubbles, no reply. The porch light flicked off by itself. That was new. Another setting. Joel must have changed. I sat on the bench by the window, the one where I used to wait for grocery deliveries. It still had the cushion I sewed to winters ago. The one Marissa once said clashed with the siding. I waited, hoping I'd hear a car pull in. The familiar engine sound that used to mean someone was home. Hours passed, still nothing. I checked my phone again. Still no response. The cold started to creep in again. I pulled my coat tighter, raised my hood, and leaned back against the wall. My stomach was empty, but I didn't feel hunger. Just that quiet, aching hollowness. By nightfall, I stopped knocking ... At some point, I must have dozed off, because the creak of the porch woke me. It was Leah, my neighbor from next door. She'd lived alone ever since her husband passed. We weren't close, not in the way people share secrets, but we'd had enough cups of tea and mailbox chats for her to know when something wasn't right. She stood there in her robe and slippers, holding a flashlight and a frown. She didn't ask questions, just said I looked cold. I followed her inside without a word. Her house smelled like lemon balm and wood polish. She handed me a blanket and poured tea like she'd done it 100 times. I sat at her kitchen table, hands curled around the warm mug. Later that night, I tried Joel again. Still no answer. I stared at the screen, rereading the messages I'd sent. They didn't look like my words anymore, just distant echoes. I slept on Leah's couch that night, not because I wanted to, because I had nowhere else to go, and for the first time, I understood what it meant to be on the outside of your own life. Not visiting, not passing through, just locked out, quietly, completely. A few days later, I got a FaceTime call from Lily, late at night, unexpected. Her small face filled the screen. Eyes bright but shaking with something heavy. She held the phone in both hands, like it might slip away if she didn't. Her voice was soft. She told me what no child should ever have to say. that they didn't want anyone seeing me anymore. That Mom said I wasn't capable, that I couldn't handle the money. Each word was whispered, but it hit harder than a scream. The truth wasn't behind closed doors anymore. It came through my granddaughter's tears. I gripped the phone tight. I nodded, though she couldn't see it. Her tears mirrored mine, the ones I'd buried so long I'd forgotten what they felt like. Her innocence had been stolen and shaped by words that weren't hers. After the call, I lay in the dark staring at the ceiling. The shadows pressed in, thick and familiar. I thought of all the nights I'd stayed up nursing Joel through sickness, back when he was small, back when I was the one who made the world less scary. But the world had changed, and this time, I was the one left fragile, the one shut out by the people I trusted most. The next morning, I found the envelope on Leia's doormat. Thick, stamped with the county seal, legal. Inside were documents declaring me mentally unfit. My breath caught. Joel's name was on them. Morris's too. They weren't just moving on. They were moving me out, starting with my assets. I sat down on Leia's wooden floor, the papers trembling in my hands. Every word was sharp, clinical, cold. Assessments, declarations. A formal path to erase me from my own life. I traced Joel's signature with my finger. It looked neat, steady, practiced. Leia must have sensed something was wrong. She came over with a plate of warm bread. Didn't ask, just sat with me. Her presence didn't solve anything, but it kept me from unraveling. That day changed something. It marked the start of a new chapter. One where I understood the fight wasn't just about the house or the bank account. It was about my dignity, my voice, my right to still matter. The next morning, I went into the garage, back corner, behind old paint cans and dusty holiday boxes. Sat the filing cabinet. It hadn't been opened in over a decade. Its drawers were stiff, the metal cold under my fingers. Bill kept everything in there. Our mortgage records, insurance forms, and somewhere deep inside, his will. I flipped through yellowed folders, some with labels in my own handwriting from years ago. At the very back, bottom drawer, I found it, a manila envelope, my name written in Bill's steady hand. Dated 13 years ago. Inside was the original will. It was clear, if anything happened to him, I retained full control of the house and our finances. Joel wouldn't inherit until after my death. There was even a clause, nothing could be transferred or overridden without my written consent. I held the paper like it was a life preserver, ran my hand over Bill's signature. He always leaned his letters slightly right when he was nervous. I remembered that day, after his second heart scare, when we signed the papers at the kitchen table. He just wanted to be sure I'd be okay. I hadn't wanted to talk about it then, but now, that paper was the only thing standing between me and vanishing. That afternoon, I brought the envelope to Leonard Hill's office. Same lawyer Bill had used. The sign outside was faded. The waiting room still smelled faintly of old carpet and lemon cleaner. Leonard was older, but sharp. He read through the will slowly. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair and told me something I didn't expect. A few months ago, Joel had contacted the office. Said he was helping me organize things. Claimed I'd lost the originals. Leonard refused to release anything without my consent, but Joel managed to pull a scanned version from an old shared folder Bill once set up. He had used that draft to file for a revision. The courts hadn't finalized it yet. No approvals, just a pending case. waiting on a competency hearing. So that's what the envelope was, a part of the case Joel had been quietly building. No confrontation, just small moves behind the curtain. I stayed another hour with Leonard. He laid out my options, said we could create a legal wall, solid enough to hold, even against family. I nodded. I was ready. That night, I placed the original will in a new fireproof box. Set it beside my bed. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't send a message. Didn't breathe a word. Let the silence speak for me. Because now, I knew something they didn't. I wasn't broken. I was preparing. The next day, I took a cab across town. Went to see Carol Simmons. We hadn't spoken in years. She used to be our neighbor, then our accountant, then the woman who brought peach cobbler after Bill passed. She'd retired and moved out to a quieter stretch near the lake. I knew she'd understand. When I showed up at her door, she didn't hesitate. Her house smelled like lavender soap and paper. We sat at her dining table with 2 mugs of tea between us. I told her everything. Joel's forged request, the petition to have me declared unfit, the way he and Marissa had moved pieces around without asking. Carol didn't blink. She got up, walked to a tall cabinet, and came back with a slim binder. Inside was the blueprint for a personal protection trust. Nothing flashy, nothing complicated. Just solid, private, legal, within my rights. We started the paperwork right there. First the house, then the savings. Even the small pension I still got from my years at the community college. Each form I signed made my hands shake a little less. The trust wouldn't belong to Joel or to anyone else in the family. It would be owned and shielded by something called the Pierce Living Foundation. Carol came up with the name, half joke, half tribute. She said it sounded like something no one would question. I agreed. Carol became the trustee. I remained the sole beneficiary. No inheritance, no succession plan, just a wall that couldn't be breached without my signature or my death. Even then, it was protected. We filed the documents the next morning. I returned home just before noon. Joel and Marissa were out. The house was still. I made myself a sandwich, swept the kitchen floor, moved my old photo albums from the living room into my closet. No one noticed. I didn't announce what I'd done. Didn't leave a folder on the table. Didn't hint. Silence had always been their weapon. I figured it could be mine too, that night. Joel mentioned something about paperwork taking longer than expected. I nodded. Marissa brought up their lawyer again. She asked if I'd be open to signing a few documents. Just to make things easier. I smiled and excused myself. Later, I lay in bed with the fireproof box at my feet. The house didn't feel like a trap anymore. It felt like a chessboard, and I had just moved my queen. They didn't even know I was still in the game. The envelope came on a Thursday morning, left on the hallway table. Marissa must have placed it there before heading out. It was cream-colored, heavy stock, a gold trim pressed around the edges. Formal, performative. Inside was an invitation. A private dinner, hosted by Joel and Marissa, to celebrate my grace and cooperation. It read more like a PR statement than something for a mother. They were calling it a transition, handled with dignity and mutual respect. At the bottom, in smaller print, it listed the dress code and asked for discretion. That word sat in my chest like a rock. Discretion. Not a celebration. Then, a send-off. one they believed I had no lines left in. I folded the card, slid it into the drawer next to my bed, placed it alongside the trust documents and the handwritten notes Carol helped me prepare, not out of spite, out of preparation. I said yes to the invitation, not because I wanted to go, but because silence, when used right, speaks louder than any speech. The days leading up to it passed quietly. I stuck to my routines. I swept the porch, watered the plants, nodded politely when Marissa passed, her eyes never leaving her phone. Joel came home late most nights, took calls in the garage. I didn't ask, didn't interfere. I didn't have to. On the day of the dinner, I ironed one of my older dresses, dark navy, simple, clean. I brushed my hair, put on the pearl earrings Bill gave me on our 25th anniversary. They weren't expensive, but they were mine. The dining room had been redone, new tablecloths, rented candles, glassware that didn't belong to us. Joel greeted me with a smile that stopped at his mouth. Marissa didn't greet me at all. She was too busy instructing the caterers. There were 7 guests, old neighbors, some of Joel's colleagues, people I hadn't seen in years, people who didn't know what this night was meant to seal. Dinner moved fast. The toasts were short. Joel stood at the head of the table. He talked about growth, about legacy, about family resilience. Marissa chimed in, said she was grateful for how smoothly the year had gone. They used words like cooperation, transition, grace. Every sentence polished just enough to hide its sharp edges. When Joel raised his glass to toast me to my dignity, he said, I lifted mine too. I smiled when people looked my way. But I didn't drink. Not yet. Because I hadn't come to play along. I had come to be remembered. And I didn't come empty-handed. In my purse, beneath a folded napkin, was a copy of the amendment clause, the one Joel never thought I'd kept. The one that said any heir who used coercion, manipulation, or isolation to control the grantor would lose all rights to the estate, immediately and without contest. I waited until the room got quiet. The quartet in the corner paused between songs. I reached into my purse and unfolded the page. A few guests glanced over. Joel's expression didn't shift at first, but I saw it in his eyes. I cleared my throat, spoke softly, didn't rush. I thanked everyone for the dinner, for the effort. Then I said I had something to read aloud, just one paragraph, from a document some in the room may have forgotten existed. Joel didn't stop me, didn't say a word. I read it clearly, each word landing like a brick. Any beneficiary found to have used coercion, isolation, or undue influence toward the grantor shall forfeit all rights to inheritance or property benefit, effective immediately and without contest. I folded the page again, slipped it back into my purse, lowered my eyes to my plate. The room was silent. Joel didn't speak. Marissa opened her mouth, then closed it. Even the servers stopped moving. The quartet picked up again, softer now, like they weren't sure what song they were playing. I stood, quietly excused myself, didn't look for applause, didn't wait for a reaction. In the hallway, I glanced back once. Joel was still staring at his wine glass. Marissa was already whispering into her phone. The guests sat frozen, unsure of what had just happened. It wasn't a scene. It was a record, a line drawn. Clear, unshakable. Not for drama. For truth. The next morning, the house was quieter than I'd ever heard it. No footsteps, no music. Even the hum of the refrigerator felt muted, like it didn't want to be noticed. I thought they might confront me, demand answers, but nothing came. Their silence was louder than words. And in it, I heard everything. I opened my closet, pulled out the old storage bin filled with photographs I'd meant to sort for years. Most were neatly organized. A few were still in envelopes from the drugstore. The smell of aged paper filled the room as I opened album after album. There was Joel at 6, dressed as a tree in his school play. Joel at 12, holding a trophy bigger than his head. Family road trips, birthdays, holidays. Bill in his flannel shirts, always off to the side with a hand on someone's back. But then, the photos stopped. No pictures after Joel's 30th birthday. No wedding album. No snapshots from Lily's birth. No family holidays in the last decade. They were never shared with me. The absence wasn't dramatic, just gradual, like being quietly edited out of a life you once carried. That afternoon, Lily came into my room, no knocking. She held a wrinkled piece of notebook paper in one hand and her favorite green hoodie in the other. Her face was flushed, eyes wide, same as the night she called me from her tablet. She didn't say much, just walked straight into my arms and hugged me hard. I sat on the edge of the bed. She curled beside me, knees tucked in. After a long silence, she whispered, "You're my real family." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't need to. I reached under the bed and pulled out an old album, the one with gold stitching on the brown cover. Flipped to a page with photos of my garden. Bill in his flannel jacket, me younger, smiling with a basket of pears. I handed it to her, told her she could keep it. She turned the pages slowly, ran her fingers over each image, stopped at a picture of Joel, 8 years old, chocolate on his chin. Laughing, she smiled but moved on. Paused longer at a photo of Bill and me dancing. She asked if I missed him. I said yes. She didn't ask if I missed Joel. She already knew. That evening, I left a small box outside Lily's door. Inside was another album, one that told the story of a life lived before signatures and courtrooms tried to erase me. A record, for her, for the future. Proof that I had been here, that I had mattered. Joel and Marissa came back 3 days later. They used the side entrance. Their voices low, keys jingling. I was already packed. The house felt emptier, not because they were gone, but because it had finally stopped pretending to be home. I stayed in my room while they walked through the kitchen and hallway. Their footsteps sounded faster, tighter. I heard drawers opening, closing, then nothing. That kind of silence only comes when someone realizes the math doesn't add up. They had waited too long. My things were already gone. The closet held a single hanger and an empty shoebox. My books, my journals, even the old dishes from my mother's house, Paul boxed up and picked up by a second-hand shop 2 mornings before. The upright piano I hadn't touched in years, sold to a church down the road. Every corner that once held a piece of me now held space. At noon, Joel knocked on my door. Just once. Soft. He asked if I had time to talk. I told him I was heading out. Didn't say where. He didn't ask. He stood there, quiet, maybe hoping I'd offer a way back. An apology. A pause, instead. I handed him the envelope Carol had prepared. Inside was confirmation from the trust office and the county, legal proof that the house, The accounts, the benefits, everything had been transferred into the Pierce Living Foundation. None of it bore his name. He read the first lines, stopped, swallowed, his face paled. Then Marissa appeared behind him, phone in hand. She read over his shoulder, looked at me. Her voice didn't crack. She just said, "Good. Glad it's all settled." I nodded, then picked up my suitcase. Leah waited out front, her little blue car already running. We had agreed no speeches, no scenes. I stepped out, closed the door behind me. Didn't look back. From the street, I could see Joel standing in the hallway mirror. Marissa still on her phone. Neither followed. The drive to the coast was quiet. The sun was starting to dip as we pulled into the cottage. One story, white siding, wind chimes by the porch. No shared walls, no whispers behind them. That night, I unpacked, made tea in my mother's old kettle. The furniture didn't match, the floors creaked, but every inch was mine. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't ache. It felt earned. It was my birthday. I woke to the sound of the ocean brushing the shore. Wind chimes clinked softly above the porch. The calendar on the wall had today's date circled in pencil. I'd done that weeks ago, not because I expected anything, but to remind myself that I still had the right to claim a day. No calls came, no messages, not even one of those automated emails with a discount code. And somehow, that was okay. I brewed my coffee slowly, let the smell fill the kitchen, drifted into the living room. Outside, the sky was cool and gray. Seagulls moved across it like they had somewhere to be. I cracked the window, let the salt air in. At 10, Leah arrived. She carried a brown paper bag tied with twine. Inside were sugar cookies and a paperback novel, something about a woman who starts over at 70. No candles, no cards, just kindness. She didn't say much. Placed the cookies on the counter, poured herself tea. We sat at the little table by the window, listened to an old jazz cassette. The kind that doesn't fill the room, just hums through it. Later, I pulled a thin stack of papers from a drawer. It wasn't a memoir, not exactly, more like a letter, broken into chapters, notes to the woman I used to be. Before all of this, before the silence, before the forgetting, the first page was labeled in pencil, "I am not invisible." Leah read the first few lines. She nodded, placed her hand gently over mine. We didn't need to talk. The words had already done the work. That afternoon, we walked along the bluff. The sea stretched to our left, the sky soft and low with late light. I didn't feel older. I just felt real. There was no cake, no photos, no singing, and still, for the first time in years, I felt celebrated. By me. I sent the letter out on a Monday, tied the manuscript with a blue ribbon, placed it in a manila envelope, addressed it to the Regional Archives Center. I didn't ask for it to be published. Just asked that it be kept, filed, remembered. It wasn't for recognition. It was for the record, for the woman I used to be, for the girl Lily might someday become, for any stranger who ever needed to know that a quiet life still counted, that a voice no one asked for still held weight. Weeks later, I got a voicemail. A woman named Clara, soft-spoken, said she worked at the archive. Thanked me for the submission. Said they'd read every word. She mentioned a new community project, stories of those overlooked or erased by family systems. She wanted mine to be part of it. a collection titled Stories That Stayed Quiet. I called her back, gave my consent. That was all. Leah brought flowers the day we got the news. Wildflowers she picked near the coastal path. We placed them in a chipped vase on the windowsill, watched the waves go silver in the afternoon light. We didn't toast, didn't clap, just sat with it. A moment that didn't need anything but to be witnessed. Now, in the evenings, I write more, not always about the past, sometimes just about the sea, how it changes color at dusk, how the gulls sound when the sky clears. Life has gotten smaller, quieter, but no less meaningful. There is no grand ending, no curtain dropping, just this truth. I was left behind, and then I left her quietly, and in that silence, I built something they couldn't touch. If this story made its way into the quiet parts of your heart, I hope it reminded you of something important. You are not alone. Your voice matters, even if no one is listening. If you've ever felt erased, pushed aside, or silenced, this space is for you. You can leave a name, a thought, or nothing at all. Sometimes, knowing someone else understands is enough.